Welcome back. In this video, we are going to start to solve word problems using what we know about quadratic equations. First example, I've got a rectangular picture that's 6 by 4, and I'm going to put a frame around it. The width of the frame is the same all the way around. If the total area of the frame plus the picture is 48 square inches, the question is, how wide is the frame? Well, in this question, it states that the frame is the same width all the way around, and we're looking for that width. Well, if initially the picture was 6 inches, and I'm adding an x to the left and an x on the right, my total rectangle is going to be a width of 6 plus 2x. The height of the rectangle is going to be 4 plus 2x. That total area is now going to be 48. So 4 plus 2x's times 6 plus 2x's had to equal 48. I'm going to get that into standard form by multiplying 4 times 6 plus 2x to get 24 plus 8x. Then 2x times 6 plus 2x equals 48. Pull all my terms to the left-hand side. If I were solving this, I would then divide by 4 just to make my life a little bit easier. And then it's a little bit more obvious that this is factorable. Something that multiplies to give negative 6 and adds to give 5, that would be 6 and negative 1. Now, the interesting thing about this, using our zero product property, we see the answers are x equals negative 6 and x equals positive 1. Theoretically, sure, these answers will satisfy our criteria of making an area of 48, but how can you have a frame that has a width of negative 6 inches? It doesn't make any sense. So what we do is we cross that solution off, and we say our answer is x equals 1 inch. If you were to substitute that in, 6 plus 2 times 1 is 8. 4 plus 2 times 1 is 6. And 8 times 6 is 48. Example 2. Two numbers differ by 10. What is the greater number if their product is 336? Well, if two numbers differ by 10, that means I'm going to have a small number. And I'm going to have a large number that is 10 more than x. The product of these two numbers is 336. If I want to solve this, I'm going to have to, just like last time, distribute, subtract the right-hand side to get it in standard form. So I get x squared plus 10x minus 336 equals 0. And I'll save you the time here. X is going to equal negative 24 and 14 if we solve that correctly. Now, what we just found was x, and x represented the smaller number. We could have two numbers that meet this criteria. Numbers that differ by 10 and have a product of 336. Negative 24 and 14 aren't those two numbers. What we just found was the small number. So if the small number was negative 24, the large number would be 10 more than it, negative 14. If my small number was 14, my larger number would have been 24. So these are my two answers. The question asked for which is the greater number of the pair. Well, the greater number could have been negative 14, or the greater number could have been positive 24. Example 3. Which two positive consecutive odd numbers have a product of 1155? Now this time I'm saying to throw out one of the answers that we get. I only care about my positive solution. So even though I'm going to come up with two answers theoretically, this question is just asking for the positive value. So which two positive consecutive odds have a product of 1155? Well, consecutive odd numbers are defined as this. 1, 3, 5, 7, 9, ... all the way up. You notice that what separates odd numbers is 2. So if I figured out that the first odd number is 17, it means the next odd number would have been 19. Well, the problem here is I don't know what the first number is. So that's what I'm going to call my variable x. That is my first odd number. My next odd number is going to be 2 more than that. So this question says these two numbers have a product of 1155. X times x plus 2 is 1155. So just like the last two questions, we're going to distribute. We're going to subtract that right-hand side. And what I'm left with is something that even I would recommend using the quadratic formula here, or maybe even complete the square. Regardless, you're going to have a big square root that most people can't do in their head. And if you do this properly, you're going to end up with an x value that's positive of 33. X represented the first odd number. Therefore, my second odd number would be 35. The two numbers I'm looking for in this case are 33 and 35. Last question. A very common application of these, and that is using the Pythagorean theorem. Before I read the question, I'm just going to give you a really quick recap on Mr. Pythagoras. He was a heck of a guy. He said, in a right triangle, the square of the hypotenuse. Well, the hypotenuse is the largest side, and the square of the hypotenuse means c squared. Well, he said the square of the hypotenuse is equal to the sum of the squares of the other two sides. So the other two sides we always call a and b. The sum of the squares would be a squared plus b squared. Now, the main mistake people make with the Pythagorean theorem is when they're trying to find a side, they have to remember that the hypotenuse is always the largest side and it is always across from the right angle. Because if you have a right triangle, the largest angle is going to be the 90 degrees. So the side that's opposite that will have to be the biggest side. So don't forget, the hypotenuse squared is equal to the sum of the squares of the other two sides. Now, let's use that drawing to answer this question. It says the first leg is 4 less than the hypotenuse. Okay, here's the hypotenuse up here. I'm going to call it C. Oops, sorry for that. The first leg is 4 less than that. Okay, C subtract 4. The second leg is 2 more than the first leg. So this side would be C subtract 4 plus 2. 2 more than the first leg. That's the same as saying C minus 2. The question is, what is the area of the triangle? Well, I'm not going to be able to find the area until I know the dimensions, which means I'm going to have to figure out this value of C. To do that, I need the Pythagorean theorem. The hypotenuse squared is equal to the other legs squared and added together. So I'm going to have to do a lot of multiplication here. C minus 2 times C minus 2, that is equal to C squared minus 4C plus 4. C minus 4 quantity squared, that is C squared minus 8C plus 16. I'm going to have to collect my like terms. Right away I see I've got a C squared here and a C squared there. So I can simplify that. Then when I collect my terms, I've got 0 equals C squared minus 12C plus 20. It actually simplifies quite nicely. And this should be factorable. Multiplies to give 20, adds to give negative 12. looks like -10 and -2. Which means my solutions are 10 and 2. So if my hypotenuse is 10, my triangle would look like this. 10, 6, 8. And that is a right triangle because 6 squared plus 8 squared equals 10 squared. That checks. Now the value of 2 is more interesting to me. That means on my hypotenuse of 2, then this base would be 2 subtract 4 is -2. And then my height would be 2 subtract 2, which is 0. And I gotta say, that is a funny looking triangle. In fact, while theoretically it holds for the Pythagorean theorem, in geometric terms, in the real world, it makes no sense. So we're gonna say that C cannot be 2. This answer makes no sense. So now that I know my hypotenuse, I know the other two sides, and I can answer the question. The question said, what's the area? Area of a triangle is base times height divided by 2, or 8 times 6 divided by 2, or 24 square units. That's it for this video. Hope it helped. Have a great weekend and stay healthy. Bye for now.